Frostbolt and Arcane Explosion are baseline. Who needs them, am I right? Ha! Well, that's not the point. Arcane Explosion is kind of a free AoE cast on the move and Frostbolt slows shit. But the idea is unpruning is upon us and you better rejoice. With a change and rechange and change of Ignite, fire is looking better and better. But is it enough though? Did it fall from its BFA grace? No lucid dreams, no bracers? I mean, what else is there? Let's at least take a look at everything new and changed with fire in Shadowlands. As an overall heads up, fire has received a bunch of abilities from the other two specs and quite a few talents have been buffed to offer more variety. This and more you can catch us, see and do on our stream at twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline. We stream 5 days a week, Shadowlands and BFA, dungeons and raids, and one day rated battlegrounds with Marcelian if he can get his ass on stream. Yes, I'm not Marcelian. But on with the share! First off, Arcane Intellect has been nerfed to offer 5% intellect instead of the live version of 10%. The initial argument was so that it aligns with what classes like Demon Hunters and Monks offer in their 5% extra damage increase debuff. Never did the math to figure out if they were unbalanced, but I suppose combining Arcane Intellect with Demon Hunter's 5% magic damage increase can net a higher damage output. Same with Warriors and Monks. I don't know, but the numbers are the same, so that means that it's balanced, right? 5 is 5, isn't that how it works? We shouldn't overthink this, guys. Arcane Explosion and Frostbolt are back as well, and as far as feedback goes, I totally forgot I had them. Ha! No, really, the playstyle of Mage leaves almost no real room to use them, at least in the current context of the game, where we do a low-level dungeon and quest through the zones. I could see them creating torghast builds, and maybe there could be a niche for explosion in higher level content, but we don't have that yet, so it's hard to tell. Mirror Image is baseline though, and this is a very cool change. Mostly visual. I mean, the images fire shit at the enemies, but it's hard to tell if the damage output is something we should be excited about, since we cannot really measure it right now without add-ons. Alter Time is back, although it doesn't seem to be implemented yet. The function is likely the same as it always has been, where it rewinds time, putting you back to where your HP levels and position and cooldowns were a few seconds ago. It seems like a pain to balance for fire, considering combustion is such a big part of your output today. Getting 2 back-to-back combustions, especially in a BFA world where you get to use lucid dreams and wrists again, seems crazy. Not as crazy in Shadowlands, but still likely to be subjected to some future balance iterations before we can get the final version of it. Maybe be put on an 8-minute cooldown, something like Army of the Dead for DKs. Currently it's on a 1-minute cooldown, so if left like this, I doubt it will affect your cooldowns as well. Probably just your position and your health levels. We'll have to see. These are all basic baseline abilities. As far as fire specific stuff, Ignite has been changed twice. Right, now it still will not spread automatically. It will stack its damage, but the spreading not being automatically can be both good and bad. Now it will require Phoenix Flames to be spread. The good part is that it requires decision making and a certain player skill level that can create differences between people optimizing Ignite spread and people who don't. At first glance anyway. The bad part is that it requires a GCD, and Phoenix Flames could and were kind of needed to extend the hot streak fishing window in your combustion, since you lost Memory of Lucid Dreams and Mechagon Wrists. Having Phoenix Flames baseline kind of made up for that, even though they are still not Fire Blasts. The way it looks like Blizzard wants to nerf Ignite in AoE, which on live is pretty crazy, by giving mages the choice to either maximize one Ignite during combust or save a charge of Phoenix Flames at the end to spread it. It will require a lot more optimization, but is that a bad thing? I guess it just depends how it ends up feeling as far as gameplay goes. Radiant Spark is the Kyrian Covenant ability, and on paper the effect is simple, as long as it works properly and doesn't bug out. It deals some initial damage and a small dot over 8 seconds. The target will take 10% extra damage from your direct damage spells, stacking each time the target is hit. The Venthyr will get you Mirrors of Torment, which is one of the cooler options you can play with. It's a short cast that debuffs the target for 20 seconds with 3 mirrors. Every time the target casts a spell, gets hit by a fair amount of damage and gets slowed both in cast speed and move speed by 15%. The third time this happens, the target gets hit by a much larger chunk of damage and silenced for 4 seconds with a root on top. The effect on paper is crazy good against casters. In PvE, however, seems niche at best. There are hardly any mobs that will cast back-to-back spells for this to be effective, unless there will be raid bosses, which is also unlikely that we will get caster raid bosses to use this 100% of the time on. This looks more like a PvP spell that you can cast on a healer or caster, giving them 20% seconds of, man, am I casting, am I holding, fuck, what am I doing for 20 seconds? It's nice that PvP is getting this much love, but at the same time, if you like the Venthyr and the feel of the overall Covenant, chances are you won't get much out of this one if you plan to raid and do dungeons mostly. Ardenwold comes with Shifting Power, which has the potential to be a really good dungeon ability. Raid as well, but maybe not as much. It's a 6-second channel ability that sends waves of nature damage around you, and for the duration of the channel, you continuously reduce the cooldown of your mage spells. Now that you don't have Lucid Dreams and 2-minute trinkets, there isn't a big reason to not reduce the cooldown of combustion. Maybe this can even work with the Kindling talent, working towards a meta where Fire Mage has very short combust cooldowns to offset the lack of Fire Blasts and instant pyros in general that you have access to while inside said combustion. Outside of this, really, it's pretty much a build-defining ability at this point. It has 45-second cooldown, which is a very big deal, and a major difference between this and the Venthyr ability when it comes to effect and performance. And lastly, save the best for last, guys. Deathborn! Lich mode activated! Goddamn, this is probably the coolest Covenant ability yet, simply from the aesthetics and how much people wanted liches in the game. Yeah, you transform into a skeletal mage for 20 seconds, gaining 10% spell damage and buffing Fireball, Frostbolt and Arcane Blast to hit up to 2 enemies near your target. The cleave is actually pretty cool, although I can see this working better for the other 2 specs since most of Fire's cleave damage comes from Ignite spread. Even so, the effect is simple, 10% magic damage and cleave for 20 seconds every 3 minutes as its cooldown. It doesn't sound as strong as Shifting Power from the Night Fae, but it's definitely the coolest thing to be a fucking lich for 20 seconds, come on! Well, Skeleton Mage, but we all know. We know. For the talents, a few things to talk about. 1, a bunch of them have been buffed. 2, we have one missing at the moment since it will take the place of Phoenix Flames. Phoenix Flames being under supervision at the moment since the devs said they are waiting for our feedback on how it feels in the rotation and playstyle. So things will 100% change for Fire, maybe even before the beta rolls out. With that out of the way, Focus Magic is one of the new talents. Well, the only new one we have at the moment. Focus Magic is an interesting addition. It's a buff for a friendly, so you cannot use it on yourself, you greedy bastard. The buff has no cooldown but lasts 30 minutes. The target of the buff will get 5% extra crit chance, and when they crit, you also get 5% crit chance but for 10 seconds. This can make Fire Mage very desirable, and you will definitely get whispers to use this on people if you end up taking it instead of, say, Rune of Power. As far as it being worth it, well, we will have to see, because once again, there is no way to tell with the current version of the alpha. Alex Strauss's Fury has been buffed to make Dragon's Breath also increase the damage of your next Pyro or Flame strikes by 35%. This is an interesting change, one that offers again more options for Hot Streak and something to manage and maybe Snapshot, since the damage you will deal with the next Pyro or Flame strike will contribute to your Ignite damage, obviously. So the higher the Pyro, the higher the Ignite. Same for Flame Strike. The purpose was also to make it more competitive with Flame On, which was a hard thing to accomplish in BFA. Now we are just waiting on the last talent to be added and see if this will end up as another dead talent row with only one viable option for the entire expansion. Please, please no. And speaking of dead talent row, haha, this is a reoccurring issue for almost all specs in the game. Yes, almost all specs Blizzard, not just Fire. And Blast Wave is the first example of steps taken in the right direction. Now, the targets will be slowed for 6 seconds up from 4, and the overall damage increased for the skill. This row was almost dead for years, where Shimmer was just way too good to pass out, and even with this change, Shimmer might still be on top. But at least Blast Wave is more appealing even by a little bit. Lord knows fire mages could use slows in high mythic keys to help tanks kite and control mobs. Could see play in raids depending on the encounter design. Similar effect was applied to Ring of Frost as well, where the targets get slowed by 65% for 4 seconds once they break out of the incapacitate effect. Although this saw more use in PvP, with the added effect, not only will it be better in arenas, it will actually see play in dungeons, since you will get both effects of the incap and slow depending on what you want, and you don't need to sacrifice Shimmer for this, unless the longer cooldown outweighs the value of a talent. I mentioned Kindling before with the Night Fae ability. Kindling has been buffed to reduce the cooldown of Combust by 1.5 seconds up from 1 second on live servers. And if you have been in the Fire Mage community, you know there's a less popular build but with some potential that focuses on Kindling. If this change was on live, it could make Fire actually have 2 builds, which is mind-blowing. 2 builds? For 1 spec? That doesn't sound right. What is this? Variety Hour? That and Pyroclasm has also received a buff to its damage scaling coefficient, hopefully making it into the game. It had a brief resurgence in 8.1 if I recall correctly, so who knows, maybe Shadowlands is its time. I believe Fire Mage is one of the clearest indications that the devs are listening to the feedback players are giving. It's also an example of their intention of maybe finally designing and balancing things like talents where there is more than one choice in the talent spreadsheet mobile game system. My hope is that they keep their forges ready for when we have damage meters and access to proper theory crafting so we can feedback the numbers as well. If they can take that into consideration and make talents more balanced, as a player I would be extremely happy. What do you think though? Fire is in an explosive state in BFA and it's losing a lot of things, mostly things that's propping it up in the meta, maybe as the #1 DPS spec. Will it fall from its BFA grace? Will the new changes round up into something worthwhile? I'll keep my eyes open, and you should keep your eyes peeled for the Altered Time Discord, where a lot of Fire Mages are testing shit out and people theorycraft builds and what could be good and what bad. It's early still, yeah, but with the proper feedback the devs could make a better Fire Mage for Shadowlands. And as always, we would like to thank our patrons for supporting our content. Thank you very much, guys. We love and appreciate all of your help and support for making this a reality, for making this something that we could, you know, make a living out of and improve, because, you know, that's really the end goal. And if you are interested in supporting our channel a little bit more, the link is down in the description. It's clearly not mandatory, but does help a lot and we really appreciate it. And hey, maybe you can find some goodies down there, because there are a couple of goodies there for you. Thank you very much for watching the video. Hope it helped, hope you found it enjoyable, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.
Never thought I'd meet someone